She cheated with our neighbor during the sale of our family home, then filed a false lawsuit claiming I stole $250, $0 from her. Turns out she was secretly working with her lawyer to spin a scam that nearly bankrupted me. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling a story like this, but life has a way of throwing punches when you least expect them. It all started with what seemed like a normal day, but it turned into something I couldn't even imagine. One moment, I was planning to sell our family home, trying to get everything ready, and the next, I was stumbling upon a web of lies, betrayal, and outright scams that nearly destroyed me. The craziest part, my wife was behind it all, and I only found out because I accidentally overheard a phone call she was having with her lawyer. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong, and I had been together for over 10 years. We married young, built a life, and had 2 kids. At first, everything seemed perfect. She was the kind of wife who looked like she had it all together. Bitchy, yes, but confident and sharp. She always knew how to push my buttons, but I loved her. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I truly believed we were solid. Things started to change about 6 months ago when she became more secretive, more dismissive. She'd hide her phone more often, get defensive if I asked questions, and started working late more frequently. I brushed it off, convincing myself she was just stressed with the sale of the house and her job. Plus, she always had an excuse: it's just a deal, or I'm working on something important, she'd say with that bitchy smirk. But I noticed her phone was more active late into the night, and she'd get defensive if I even tried to look at her screen. One night, I caught her texting someone, and she quickly deleted the message when I walked in. That was the first real sign that something was off. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I told myself maybe she was talking to a friend or someone from her work. But then, things started to get worse. The real turning point was when I decided to help her pack up the house for the sale. I was in the study going through some papers, trying to get everything organized, when I noticed a strange email thread on her laptop. It was from her lawyer, a guy named Mark, and they were discussing some kind of scam involving the sale proceeds. The emails didn't make sense at first. They talked about covering their tracks and diverting funds. I remember feeling a cold shock run down my spine. I knew wasn't exactly honest, but I never thought she'd get involved in something like this. Then I saw the name of the neighbor, Jason, pop up in the emails more than once. That's when I started connecting the dots. Had been spending more time with Jason, the guy next door, and they seemed way too close. I saw her sneaking out one night, her phone glued to her hand, and her behavior was suspiciously flirtatious. She'd laugh at his jokes, touch his arm a little too long, and I swear she even called him babe, once when she thought I wasn't looking. It was obvious she was cheating on me, and it was with the guy who lives right next door. That revelation hit me like a punch in the gut. I felt betrayed, furious, and honestly, stupid for not seeing it earlier. The worst part, the house sale, which I thought was a straightforward deal, was actually a cover-up for her scam. She and her lawyer had devised a way to steal about $250, $0 from the sale proceeds, and she was planning to split it with Jason. She told me she was just trying to get the best price for the house, but instead she'd been working with her lawyer to spin a scam that could bankrupted me. I felt like I'd been played for a fool for years. All the times she said she loved me, all the plans we made, none of it was real. It was just a part of her con. When I confronted her with the evidence, her reaction was cold. She everything at first, then spun some elaborate lie about how I was paranoid, jealous, and imagining things. She said her affair with Jason was just sex, that I didn't understand her, and that I was insecure. She told me I was overreacting, that she was entitled to a little fun, and that I should just accept it, but I knew better. I knew she had been lying about so much more. The scam, the affair, the manipulation, it all clicked into place. I felt sick, betrayed, and angry beyond words. I had trusted her for years, and now I saw her for what she really was: a liar, a cheat, and a scammer. That's where I am now, trying to figure out what to do next. I don't even know if I can forgive her or if I want to. All I know is my world has been turned upside down, and I'm left picking up the pieces of a life I thought was solid. I've never felt so helpless and betrayed in my entire life. And the worst part, I still love her, even after everything. But love doesn't fix lies like these. It just makes you feel stupid for trusting someone you shouldn't have. After I found out about Saf's affair and her involvement in the scam, everything changed overnight. I remember sitting in the quiet of the living room, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me so heavily that I could barely breathe. I kept replaying her lies, her sneers, the way she dismissed my concerns like I was some paranoid idiot. The anger was raw, boiling just beneath the surface. I'd always thought I knew her, but this was something else entirely. I knew I had to confront her again, but I also knew that whatever I said or did, she'd spin it around, twist it to make herself look like the victim. That's what she always did: lie, manipulate, act innocent. But I couldn't take her word anymore. I needed proof, concrete evidence that she was working with Jason, that she was part of this scam. I started digging deeper, going through her emails, her phone, even tapping her calls when I could. I didn't want to do it, but I couldn't let her keep lying, not after I'd seen what I'd seen. One night, I caught her on a call with her lawyer, Mark. She was whispering, trying to hide her voice, but I was close enough to hear every word. They were planning their next move, discussing how to cover their tracks, how to split the money, and how to keep me from finding out the truth. I heard her say she'd make sure I never get a penny, and I felt my stomach drop. The extent of her deception was staggering. She'd been working with her lawyer behind my back, spinning a scam that could bankrupted me, something I never saw coming. I remember feeling this strange mix of shock and fury. For years, I'd been working hard, building a life, and now I realized it was all a lie. She'd been secretly working with Jason, cheating on me, and planning to steal everything we'd ever had. My mind raced with questions. How long had she been doing this? How deep did her lies go? And most of all, how did I let it get this far? I felt like a fool. The next day, I decided I had to confront her head-on. I found her in the kitchen, pretending to be innocent, brushing her hair in front of the mirror. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I knew everything. She tried to deny it, acting all innocent, but I wasn't buying it. I pulled out the emails, the texts, the recordings. Her face turned pale when she saw the evidence. She started to panic, then snapped back with her usual bitchy attitude, saying I was overreacting, that I was jealous, that she deserved some fun, and that it was none of my business. That's when I lost it. I told her she was a manipulative liar, that I'd been blind for too long, and that I was done. I told her I knew about her affair with Jason and her involvement in the scam, and I warned her that if she didn't come clean, I was going to expose her to everyone. Our friends, the authorities, whoever. She just sneered at me, said I was a jealous idiot, and stormed out of the house. That was the last straw. I felt a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. How could she do this to me, to our family? How could she lie so effortlessly? The emotional toll was brutal. I'd always prided myself on being a rational, level-headed guy, but that day, everything inside me felt like it was breaking. I was angry at her, furious at myself for not seeing it sooner, and deeply hurt. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind to her true nature. I thought I knew her, but I never really understood who she was. Behind that bitchy smile, the betrayal cut so deep that I didn't even know if I could trust myself anymore. I spent the next few days in a fog, trying to process what I'd uncovered. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Jason, heard her lying to my face, saw her smirk when she thought she was fooling everyone. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. Part of me wanted to fight back, to expose her and her scam publicly, to take her to court and get justice. But another part just wanted to disappear, to leave everything behind and start over. The thing is, I still loved her despite everything. I hated that I did, but I couldn't help it. That's what made this so damn complicated. Love, betrayal, anger, sadness, they all tangled up inside me. I kept thinking about the life we shared, the kids, the house, the dreams we had. It felt like that life was slipping away with every revelation. And yet, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to choose what to do next, and honestly, I was terrified of making the wrong move. After days of sitting in this mess I'd uncovered, I finally decided I couldn't keep living in this fog of betrayal and confusion. I knew I had to act, but the question was, what? I was furious, yes, but beneath all that rage was a deep sense of betrayal that made me feel like I'd lost part of myself. I'd trusted for so long, and now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative liar who'd been working with her lawyer and Jason behind my back to steal from me and cheat on me. That realization hit hard. I started planning my next move carefully. I knew I couldn't just confront her again without evidence. I needed to be strategic. I reached out to a lawyer I knew from work, someone who specialized in financial crimes and domestic betrayals. I wanted to understand exactly what I was dealing with legally, especially since I suspected she'd been funneling money illegally through the scam. I also needed to figure out if I could get a hold of the money she was trying to steal, or at least freeze her assets before she could do any more damage. Meanwhile, I continued digging into her phone and emails, looking for any other clues. That's when I discovered that she had been secretly working with her lawyer to set up a shell company. They'd created fake accounts, forged documents, and planned to divert the sale proceeds into accounts only she and Mark controlled. It was a full-on financial scam, designed to look like a legitimate sale, but in reality, they were siphoning off the money. I was stunned. How could she be so calculated? So cold? I'd always thought she was a bitchy, manipulative woman, but this was next level. One night I caught her in a lie about her whereabouts. She said she was at her sister's house, but I checked her location on her phone and saw she was actually at a hotel with Jason. That was the final straw. I knew I had enough to blow this whole thing wide open. I decided I'd go to the police with everything I'd found, her emails, the scam, the affair. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I also contacted a private investigator to gather more evidence, photos, recordings, everything I could use to prove her guilt. Things moved fast after that. I set up a meeting with the lawyer, explained everything I knew, and asked for his help in stopping her. I told him I wanted to freeze her accounts, seize any assets she was hiding, and get a court order to prevent her from selling the house or moving any money. I knew she was planning to do just that. She'd already started transferring funds into offshore accounts. The more I learned, the angrier I got. How could she do this? How could she lie, cheat, and manipulate her way through everything like it was some kind of game? I also decided I had to tell the kids the truth, as much as it would hurt them. I sat them down one evening trying to keep my voice steady and explained that Mom had made some bad choices, that she was involved in some serious scams, and that I was doing everything I could to fix things. They looked at me with confusion and fear, but I promised them I'd protect them. That was one of the hardest moments. Watching their little faces, knowing their world was about to change forever, made me realize how much I had to fight for them, to keep what was left of our family intact, even if it meant tearing everything apart first. The feeling of betrayal was overwhelming. I kept asking myself how could be so cold, so ruthless. She lied to my face, cheated on me, manipulated the legal system, and tried to steal everything we had. I felt like a fool for trusting her all those years. But I also knew I had to stay strong, even if I was falling apart inside. I was determined to fight back, to get justice, and to protect what little dignity I had left. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, not without a fight. Every new piece of evidence I uncovered made me more certain I was on the right path. I knew she was planning her next move, probably to try and cover her tracks again, but I was ready. I had the law, I had evidence, and I had the resolve. I thought about how this all started, just a simple sale of the house, a normal life, and how it had spiraled into this nightmare. But I also knew I wasn't going to let her win. I had to see this through no matter how much it hurt. I owed it to myself, to our kids, and to whatever shred of integrity was left. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This was a war, and I was going to fight it to the end. I didn't care about her excuses anymore. The lies, the affair, the scam, they were all pieces of a puzzle I was determined to finish, no matter how ugly the picture got. I knew the road ahead was tough, but I also knew I couldn't back down now. I had to see this through, even if it meant tearing my world apart to do it. The days that followed were a blur of frantic activity and mounting tension. I had lawyers involved now, a private investigator digging up every dirt they could find on dealings and court orders in motion. I felt like I was in a war I couldn't see the full scope of yet, but I knew was dangerous. She'd lied, cheated, and schemed her way through our entire marriage, and I had to be smarter, faster, sharper. The worst part, every time I thought I had her cornered, she'd come back with some new lie, some new excuse, trying to spin her way out of it. I remember the night I finally got her on the ropes. I had all the evidence I needed: emails, bank statements, recordings of her planning with her lawyer, and even some photos from the private investigator. I sat her down in the living room, the evidence spread out on the table like a battlefield. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk, trying to act like she was the victim again, but I wasn't having any of it. I told her everything I knew about her affair with Jason, her scam to steal the house sale money, her plan to disappear with the cash. Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she might break down, but instead she snapped. Her voice rose, full of venom. "You're just jealous," she spat. "You don't understand how hard I work, how much I've sacrificed. You're the one who's insecure, not me. Jason and sex with him is just something I do for fun. It's not a big deal. You're overreacting like always." I could believe what I was hearing. That's when I realized she was trying to spin everything, trying to make herself look innocent, even as her lies crumbled around her. I felt a surge of anger, not just at her but at myself for ever trusting her. How had I missed all of this? How had I been so blind? I looked at her, her bitchy face twisted with rage and defiance, and I knew I had to act fast. I told her I was done playing her game. I was going to expose her, take her to court, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. I also told her I was going to press charges for the scam, embezzlement, fraud, whatever it took. The next day, I filed the paperwork. I contacted the police, handed over all the evidence, and made a formal report about her illegal dealings. It felt like a huge weight had lifted, but at the same time, I knew the real battle was just beginning. His reaction was predictable. She went into full-blown meltdown mode. She called me every name under the sun, accused me of ruining her life, and swore she'd fight me every step of the way. I could hear her crying, then screaming, then hanging up. Meanwhile, her lawyer Mark was trying to stall, claiming I didn't have enough evidence, that everything was just a misunderstanding. But I knew better. I had everything I needed. I also hired my own forensic accountant to trace the money, and they confirmed what I suspected. And Mark had transferred hundreds of thousands of dollars into offshore accounts, trying to hide it from me. The realization that she'd been working with her lawyer to pull off this scam made me sick. How could she do this to us, to our family? The legal process moved quickly after that. Courts froze her assets, and I was granted temporary custody of the house while the investigation was ongoing. I couldn't believe how fast everything was happening, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time since I discovered her lies, I felt like I had some control. Like I was finally fighting back against the chaos she'd created. But inside, I was still hurting, angry, betrayed, and questioning everything I thought I knew about her. Throughout all this, the kids kept asking questions. I tried to be honest without giving away everything, but it was hard. I told them their mother was in trouble because she'd made some bad choices, and that I was doing everything to fix it. I promised them I'd protect them, that I'd make sure they were safe. Watching their innocent faces, I realized how much I had to stay strong for them, for myself. This wasn't just about revenge or catching her in her lies. It was about making sure they didn't grow up thinking betrayal was normal, that lying and cheating were okay. By now, I'd gone through every emotion possible: anger, sadness, frustration, even a little hope. I'd learned that trust is fragile, that love can blind you to the reality beneath the surface, and that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. But I also understood that I couldn't let her destroy everything we built. I had to fight, not just for the money or the house, but for my dignity, my sanity, and my future. The worst part, I still loved her deep down. That's what kept haunting me, how someone I cared about so much could turn into this cold, manipulative stranger. But I knew I had no choice but to keep moving forward. I had to see this through, no matter how much it hurt. Because if I didn't, I'd be letting her win, and I refused to let that happen. The legal battle was relentless. Every day I felt like I was swimming upstream, trying to hold on to what little sanity I had left. Was fighting tooth and nail, claiming innocence, accusing me of fabricating evidence, and trying to turn everyone against me. She'd call friends, family, anyone who would listen, spinning her web of lies. Her bitchy voice would ring in my ears, spouting some new excuse or blame-shifting tactic. But I had the evidence, every email, every bank statement, every recorded call. I knew I was one step ahead. The court hearings were intense. Showed up with her lawyer, Mark, trying to paint herself as the victim of a jealous, controlling husband. She'd lie under oath, deny everything, and throw accusations back at me. I sat there, listening to her bullshit, feeling the rage simmer beneath my skin. I knew she was trying to manipulate the system, to spin her lies into some kind of sympathy story. But I also knew I had the truth on my side. The evidence was irrefutable. One of the most shocking moments came when the forensic accountant presented their findings. Had transferred nearly $200, $0 into offshore accounts, trying to hide her trail. She'd also forged documents to make it look like the sale of the house was legitimate, but behind the scenes, she and Mark had been draining our equity. I'd never imagined she was capable of this level of deceit. It was like discovering she'd been a stranger all along. That realization hit me hard. How could someone I loved do this? How could she betray me and our family so completely? Meanwhile, I started to piece together a plan to expose her fully. I knew that if I could get the court to seize her assets permanently, she wouldn't be able to run or hide anymore. I also wanted her to face criminal charges for the scam. It was a long shot, but I was determined. I contacted the authorities, handed over all the evidence, and pressed for a full investigation. I knew S's lawyer was doing everything to stall, but I was relentless. I refused to let her get away with it. The kids sensed the tension but didn't fully understand what was happening. I kept things as simple as I could, telling them their mom was in trouble because of some bad choices she made. I promised I was doing everything to keep us safe, to protect our future. Seeing their innocent faces made me realize how much I had to fight, not just for justice, but for their happiness and security. I had to be strong, even if inside I was breaking apart. As the months went by, the pressure only intensified. S's lawyer tried to delay everything, claiming there was no proof of her involvement in the scam. But I had the evidence, and I knew the truth would come out. I watched her trying to spin her lies in court, but it was clear the judge was unimpressed. The court ordered her assets frozen, and the house was awarded to me temporarily. I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. I'd fought so hard, and I was finally starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. But the emotional scars ran deep. I was angry, not just but at myself. How did I let it get this far? How did I fail to see the signs? I kept replaying every moment, every lie, every betrayal, wondering how I could have been so blind. Still, I knew I couldn't dwell on the past. I had to focus on moving forward, on rebuilding what was left of my life. I had to let go of the hope I'd once had that she'd change, that she'd see reason. The truth was, she'd chosen her path, and I couldn't follow her down it anymore. In the midst of all this chaos, I started to understand one thing. Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to repair. I'd loved her, I'd believed in us, but her actions proved she was someone else entirely. It was a hard lesson, but an important one. I learned that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you have to protect yourself from those who would hurt you. I was still hurting, still angry, but I knew I had to keep fighting, for my sake, for the kids, for the truth. No matter how ugly it got, I refused to let her win by destroying everything we had built. Looking back now, I see how much I've grown. Through this nightmare, I've learned to trust my instincts again, to be cautious about who I let into my life. I realize that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you the importance of standing up for yourself. Betrayal was a brutal wake-up call, but it also made me realize my own strength. The fight isn't over yet, but I'm determined to see it through. Because in the end, justice isn't just about money or possessions. It's about reclaiming my dignity, my peace, and the hope that someday I can start over without looking over my shoulder. The court case finally reached a climax after months of legal battles, and I could feel the tension in the air every time I stepped into that courtroom. Was there, trying her best to look composed, but I saw the cracks in her facade. Her lawyer was still spinning the same stories, claiming I was making everything up, that she was innocent of the scam and her affair with Jason was just a fling she regretted. But I had the evidence, more than enough to prove her guilt. The emails, the bank statements, the offshore account details, they all painted a clear picture. When the judge finally delivered the verdict, it was a moment I'd never forget. She ordered to pay back every cent she'd stolen, including penalties and interest, and froze her assets permanently. The house was awarded to me outright, and I was granted full custody of the kids. Watching her reaction, her bitchy sneer turning into shock, felt like a small victory. But deep inside, I knew that the damage was done. Trust was shattered, and the wounds she inflicted on our family were permanent. In that moment, I realized I'd been through hell, but I'd come out the other side. I'd fought for what was right, for justice, and for my own sanity. I'd learned that no matter how much someone lies or manipulates, the truth always surfaces in the end. This web of lies had unraveled completely, and I was finally free from her grip. The relief was overwhelming, but so was the sadness. Sadness for the years lost, for the betrayal, for the trust that was crushed. The aftermath was a mix of healing and rebuilding. I focused on my kids, making sure they felt safe and loved. I started seeing a counselor to help process everything, to forgive myself for trusting her for so long. I realized that I'd been blinded by love, but I also understood that love without honesty and respect is hollow. I learned to be more cautious, more guarded, but also more hopeful. There's life after betrayal, and it can be better than before, if you're willing to fight for it. Moved out of the house shortly after the verdict. I won't lie, seeing her leave was bittersweet. Part of me still felt anger, but another part just felt relief. I knew she'd face the consequences of her actions, and I hoped she'd learn something from it. As for me, I decided to start fresh. I sold the house, used the money she'd stolen to secure a new place for me and the kids, and vowed never to let anyone manipulate me like that again. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown from this experience. I've become more cautious, more resilient, and more aware of the kind of person I want to be. Betrayal is a harsh teacher, but it also shows you what you're truly capable of. I never thought I'd be the guy sharing such a personal story, but if there's one thing I want others to take away from this, it's that no matter how deep the betrayal runs, you can survive it. You can come out stronger, wiser, and ready to rebuild a life that's truly yours. Because at the end of the day, the only person responsible for your happiness is yourself. And sometimes, you have to go through hell to realize what really matters.